Aaron, could you please do roll call?
Yes, Member Voland,
I'm happy to be here.
you, Member Baldwin Day,
I am here and I will be with you in person shortly.
thank you. Member Frank?
Here.
Member Keith?
Here.
Member Colhase?
Here.
Sounds good. You have quorum. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Aaron, also, do you have any public involvement announcements?
Yes, ma'am. Welcome to the AMATS Policy Committee. It's a special policy committee meeting today. Public comments are welcome and encouraged with 3 minutes given to each speaker. After the committee discusses each item, members of the public will be invited to comment. Housekeeping items for virtual attendees, please keep your cameras off unless speaking. For those attending by phone, press *6 to mute or unmute yourself. And a reminder, AMATS committee meetings are audio recorded and posted on the AMATS YouTube page. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So now let's talk about the agenda. There is one item that's on the agenda, and that's to review and if appropriate, approve the items listed for the Metropolitan Transportation Plan for 2052. So do we have approval of the agenda?
Approve the agenda.
Second.
Agenda is approved. So with that, we have no previous meeting minutes as this was a special session, special committee meeting last time as well. But we look forward to tomorrow's meeting on July 16th to be able to review the last meeting's minutes. Okay, so we have for action items, several project lists, complete streets, non-motorized, rail, and transit, along with the fiscal constraint and funding sources, documentation to review. But I would like to ask the committee members if there's a special order, ideas on how we may approach today's tasks.
Madam Chair, I don't know if this is a motion or a comment, but I would suggest that perhaps we take up the non-motorized topic first.
Okay. Member Voland or Baldwin Day, any comments on how you like to approach today?
Starting with non-motorized works for me.
Yeah, I actually have a handful of amendments to make to the non-motorized plan. So it might be easier for me to drive that process in person. So if there's something else we could take up for about the next 5 minutes or less, that would be helpful. But if we need to dive right in, I think I can drive and explain at the same time.
Well, how about you drive safely to get here, and then we look forward to that in person. What we could do in the meantime, because we do have a representative of the rail here, Brian Lindemood, even though at the last meeting we did approve the transit projects for the MTP, there were questions about the impacts or the reasoning for budget changes. Would the committee be okay if we asked Mr. Lindemood to just walk us through briefly those changes?
Good idea.
Okay, wonderful.
Sounds excellent to me.
Okay, thank you. And then before we do that, so the subtopic on this agenda item is the transit projects. Aaron, is there anything you want to talk to us to preface the transit projects?
Do you mean the railroad projects, not the transit one?
Rail, you're right.
Yeah, sorry, it's the transit's separate. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you guys had good discussion on the railroad projects, went through them. I apologize, staff didn't have all the information at that time, but there was a request for some additional information from RRC. They sent us that response. We sent it forward to you, but I agree. I think it'd be good to hear from Mr. Lindemood directly about the changes. Thank you.
Great. So, Mr. Lindemood, can you talk us through what we have there in the MTP and maybe any variances, focus on any variances within them?
Okay. I can do that. I don't necessarily have the changes in the variances in front of me, so but I can certainly speak to what's there. I guess we'll start out with the 1% for transit security. That's generally something that I think we're supposed to do. We've done it for years, and I believe it's something that is required of us with FTA. The second on there, preventive maintenance 5307. We substantially use most of the 5307 funds we received for maintaining our vehicle fleet. We've got somewhere in the neighborhood of about,
Here were the changes that were made, 1 through 6.
zero outline 2. Doesn't appear to be 0 at this point. So is this,
This is before any changes that happened.
this was before the change? Okay. I don't have the benefit of having finance with me to explain what they're doing, but, typically,
Mr.
on
Lindemood,
the-
if I may,
yeah,
I think one of the questions, it looks like there was a zeroing out of maintenance funding. And I think that was a primary question that I had. It was either, I don't recall exactly, it was either a significant reduction or a wholesale removal of
It
several
was.
$1 million of maintenance.
mhm. And line 2 is, in here, it's 5307, line 2. Partially fund statewide maintenance costs of passenger vehicle rail cars and locomotive. And we generally have moved the preventative maintenance stuff to our preventative maintenance is all moving to 5337, which is why we zeroed out the 5307 piece of that.
And one follow-up question to that, is that because that's a more flexible funding source, or why does that shift, why is that shift advantageous for you all?
That I can't answer. Our geniuses we have in the finance department generally are the ones that kind of try to find the best buckets. 5337 is generally fixed guideway stuff. 5307 is generally preventative maintenance. We've got a substantial amount of capital flowing through both those programs. So either they needed to move the money from one to the other, or 5337 just works better for the preventative side. I'm more on the spending the money side, so I mean, it all looks the same to me. But finance, I mean, I do know that there's specific restrictions between the 5307 and the 5337 programs. And they sometimes lean more heavily into one than the other, depending on what our capital needs are on a year-to-year basis.
If I may, Madam Chair. I think one of the reasons for the questions, Mr. Lindemood, was just, and it sounds like you're assured that the finance people, I'll say know what they're doing, but that they're proceeding in the best interest of the railroad. I think the interest of the body was just making sure that those changes that were proposed by the railroad didn't end up in some inadvertent way being detrimental. And it sounds like your conclusion is they're not. So,
no, I mean, we remain significantly capitally constrained, but that's just a function of business being down, frankly.
And just for the record, can we note, 209 member Baldwin Day, you're in person? Yeah, any other questions or comments on the railroad? Mr. Lindemood could address. Okay, thank you. If there's anything else, we'll reach out.
Certainly, yeah.
Thanks.
Sorry, I don't have all the answers for the intricacies of our finance departments.
Thank you. Okay, before we move on, any questions? I think comments for rail from this committee. Any comments from the public on rail specifically? Okay, so there's no action item here, but just with Brian here is a good opportunity. Okay, so let's move forward now to a sub action item of non-motorized. So on the agenda, there's a link to the briefing documents, and in that item brief, non-motorized has a list of 6 items that are recommended for the MTP. We had gone through them at the last meeting. So Mr. Young and Ellen, could you walk us through what the last meeting, those items were discussed?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and turn it over to the project manager to walk through each of the items for.
So for the non-motorized, the 6 items that we have here begins on line 25. So this is to remove this project as it was a duplicate project in Complete Streets. So that project is already being covered and funded through Complete Streets, so it no longer needs to be on the non-motorized list. That is the same for the next item, 26 tip CMAX 008 Transit Center. Again, that was a duplicate project that didn't get caught, so it is in the Complete Streets and funded through Complete Streets. The next is to update, so these were the TAC recommendations. This is to update the projects on line 15 and 16. Those are TIP, NO, 10A, and 10B. This is the Hyder project that's already within the MTP and the TIP, and that is to update the termini to 15th, from 15th Avenue to 9th Avenue. Again, this was a TAC recommendation. The next one is also regarding Hyder, and this is to add new Hyder projects to the list to match up with the Pell. These new projects are Chester Creek to 15th Avenue at 11 million, 9th Avenue to 5th Avenue, and then 5th Avenue to Ship Creek. At that time, and still we don't have. We do for a different termini though. Yeah. So we do have a. And then the last 2 items, number 5 is to move projects on lines 97 to 114 from programmed to not programmed. This is to accommodate for these new Pell Hyder projects. And the last is to move additional projects on those lines 57 through 67, 69, 70, 73 to 76, 79 to 81, 83, 87, and 90 from short-term to long-term. Again, this is to shift money out so that we can make funding room for those Hyder projects. Again, those were the TAC recommendations. Once you all met for the regular June session, it was asked of us to meet with the Fairview Community Council and connecting Fairview groups. And from that meeting, we came to a consensus of some slightly more adjusted termini than what the TAC had recommended. So what we would recommend is to update the projects on line 15 and 16. So again, those are that original Hyder project that's in the MTP. To update that to have the termini from 15th to 8th Avenue. And that updated total for that is 4.5 million. And then the 3 additional projects to add are is the south section of that Hyder strip, so Chester Creek / 20th to 15th. That's at 10.5 million. And then on the north section, they decided to split it up into 2 further sections. Split it up further into 2 more sections. So we have 8th Avenue to 3rd at 9.5 million, and then we have 3rd Avenue to Ship Creek at 9 million. And then, let's see, we found an additional project that'll be actually accommodated within the Hyder projects. So we can remove the project on line 49, which will free up some of that funding that's needed for Hyder. So that is the TAC recommendations and staff's recommendations for the non-motorized list.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the committee?
Madam Chair, if I can.
Yes.
Do we have, can someone point out to me, so the staff recommendations are not reflected in this memo, correct? The updated ones?
They
Yeah.
are under the PC action on page, yes, under the PC action, the 3 sub points are the staff's recommendation after the Fairview meeting.
Oh, I see. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yes.
So the further note under projects or under number 6 in the non-motorized plan is a suggestion that I'm bringing forward as a replacement for number 6. So I was concerned that we were sort of just wholesale removing the projects at the bottom of the list as a way to free up that 16-ish million in order to accommodate the Hyder project. And so I did a little bit of extra digging into this table, and I think may have crafted a solution that actually retains the items or most of the items in number 6 and really does some cleanup work to remove some duplicative projects. So I'm not sure how the committee would like for me to proceed with these suggestions. I could go through them one at a time, or what would that be?
Yeah, let's go through them one at a time, unless any
Okay.
objections.
I have a question real quick. Is it just 6 or is it also 5? Because 5 is moving projects out as well.
Let's see.
The 6 is just from short-term to long-term and 5 is from program to not program.
Yes, this would be 5 and 6. This would be a replacement for 5 and 6. Thank you, Mr. O'Malley.
So how about process wise, if you could work through them all?
Sure.
And then we have any questions, comments, and then do public comment. And then we can go back and make motions, kind of a bulk.
Sounds like a great process. Let's go for it. So line 32 is Gamble and Ingram Streets, East 6th to East 3rd Avenue. This project is now incorporated in a separate project. So this is duplicative funding. That's $5.5 million that is currently in short-term funding. It could be removed altogether.
Clarify what project that is.
Yes, that is.
Is that covered within the Complete Streets project,
It is,
Aaron?
yeah, I'm cross-referencing tables. Apologies, I did not come prepared with the cross-reference. If someone finds it before me, feel free to call it out.
Sorry, we're checking real quick. Is it? What we do?
So there's line 77 is the Ingra Gamble Road Diet. I guess I would want to know for my part, if we remove that, where else it is being covered, that the pedestrian improvement portion within a Complete Streets project.
So, no, these are the streets version. I just don't know what line they are in the Google Streets space. So they are the Complete Streets projects that would cover this are in the current Complete Street list. I'm trying to find the numbers, but they are they're the ones that are currently listed as a separate Ingra Gamble projects that would rehabilitate Ingra Gamble. However, staff has recommended changes to those because they don't match up with the PEL's description of them, so we need to change them. I'm trying to find them for you really quickly. What line they are.
So line 77 of Complete Streets is the road diet that precedes. I think I would have this so memorized. Then it is line 138.
Yeah, that's the rehabilitation for Gamble Street.
Yeah.
Is 138.
And then Ingram is on 156. Oh, wait, sorry, that was a different.
Is it 132? Yeah, 132. So 132 and 138.
So it would be 77, 132, and 138 in the Complete
Um,
Streets.
Yes. So does that, okay, and to include separated non-motorized facilities. So if I'm understanding Member Baldwin Day, that would be the, the $5.5 million is already sort of covered within these projects.
Correct.
And can staff maybe speak to that, or I don't know if it's probably not, I don't know if there's somebody from the project team that would be able to verify that.
Yeah, I do see, I believe that's probably Galen Jones, or I'm not sure if Luke Boland is online, but either one of them could perhaps speak to this. I do worry that they're different scopes. And then at least that way we could make a decision on the scope that we prefer, but yeah, how about Luke? Are you online?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Luke Boland, DOT Central Region Pre-Construction Engineer. So the Pell has improvements for Ingra Gamble that are based on recommendations coming out of NeighborWorks. And believe that's a Main Street configuration on Gamble and a 3-lane configuration on Ingra with 2-way traffic and a center turn lane. In terms of the near-term lane reduction, so we are through the lane reduction analysis based on the chief engineer's directive, and that is supportive of a lane drop within those areas. And we have the HSIP project to pursue those lane drops. And that, I believe, initial funding is for design in fiscal year 27. Hopefully that answered the question, but happy to answer any follow-ups.
Yeah, Luke, I think what we're concerned about is that there's duplicative projects that are programmed in the MTP. Like the one that Member Baldwin Day was pointing out is 16th Avenue to East 3rd Avenue. And that's 5.5 million for pedestrian infrastructure. But then also as you mentioned, we have several other projects that are HSIP funded. So it could be that we're combining projects. But one example would be the lane reduction, which has non-motorized, like separate, we have separations. So yeah, could you speak to that if there are duplicative, you think, or if, that's intentional, breaking them apart?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I think, my impression of what the MTP does is it really establishes the needs within a fiscal constraint for, the 20 to 30 year time period that we have in the future. And so I don't know if there's any, staff may have a better answer for this, but I think just showing the needs there within the MTP is good, even if there's a little bit of duplication on it. And then I think, the refined version comes in the tip, right, where we're actually showing how that's going to be funded within the next 4-year period.
Could I maybe restate the question, Chair? Is that okay?
Please do, yeah.
So the proposal is to remove line 32 from the non-motorized, which would essentially do away with the project description is that the project will construct pedestrian infrastructure on Gamble and Ingra Streets from East 16th to East 3rd Avenue. The cost estimate of $5.5 million. So, Luke, if that goes away, that $5.5 million of programming, are we good still? Because we have these other projects programmed in the complete streets list that talk about separated non-motorized facilities. I guess my concern is that the sidewalks, as we all know, on Gamble and Ingra are terrible, not only in their condition but also their design and how thin they are, and they really present a challenge. So if removing that $5.5 million doesn't impact the rehabilitation of those roads and that can be reprogrammed elsewhere, great. But if that is needed, in addition to the $23 million for Ingress Street rehabilitation on the complete streets list and the $20.5 million for Gamble Streets on the complete streets list, then I wouldn't want to I wouldn't necessarily want to do away with that. Does that make sense?
No, it does. Yeah, thank you for that clarification. Yeah, in my opinion, we could remove line 32 from the non-motorized list because it is included in the complete streets, the other projects on the complete streets list.
Fairview's not going to be not getting sidewalks if we do that, correct?
But I think we're both on board with the need for improvements to the non-motorized facilities there on Ingra Gamble. So yeah, no, I don't think this would be to the detriment of what we're trying to do both in the near term and the long term on Ingra Gamble.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that.
Reassuring to hear that, Mr. Bolas, Kent Colhayes. This is maybe more for staff. Line 32 in the non-motorized is showing in the short-term timeline, and the projects we're considering removing from the complete streets are in the long term. Is there a substantive impact to those distinctions?
So when we got this list, worked through this list with Member Baldwin today, we made sure everything kind of evened out in the end, but it wasn't necessarily a long-term for short-term here in the same amount, or taking something out entirely and putting it. So it wasn't really apples to apples. It was just making sure in the end road, everything was fiscally constrained.
So then I guess following up and building on Mr. Boland's comments and concerns, we're assured that Fairview will still get sidewalks and generally on the same time frame that they would have gotten them otherwise.
Yeah, so a little additional information to piggyback off of that. I brought this to the meeting today and have one in front of all of you. This is a comparison of the projects that are already in the MTP and the Pell project. So you can see the ones that we're talking about, the one that's on line 118 and 138. And part of what we're going to ask you all today is to update these descriptions to match the Pell descriptions above them. And both of those include the pedestrian, the sidewalks. So they are going to be captured in those projects.
And at the dollar amount that's needed when we're doing fiscal constraint. I know that 5.5 million is a lot, so.
Yeah, it's been accounted for.
Covered. Okay. Okay. Any other questions, comments on this one from the committee? Okay, next one. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Luke.
Don't go far.
Yeah.
So the B is similar on line 34. We have Denali Street from East International Airport Road, roughly Eagle Street to East Fireweed Lane. This project is reflected in the complete streets table, line 29. Which is Amex Denali Street, complete streets, Fireweed Lane to Tudor Road. The recommendation here would be to recommend adding the Eagle segment as a neighborhood greenway, since that is on the opposite side of the Tudor intersection. But otherwise, this project to construct a separated bikeway and pedestrian infrastructure is part of the Denali Complete Streets plan.
Maybe we can first go to Luke, if that's okay.
Of course, yes, by all means, ask the experts.
Yeah, Luke, did you hear the Member Baldwin Day's suggestion?
I apologize. Can you restate the question?
Sure, Mr. Boland. I'm suggesting that in the that line 34 in the draft non-motorized project list is similarly reflected in the draft complete streets project list at number 29. And I'm wondering if you could verify that the complete streets project in fact incorporates line 34 with the exception of the Eagle segment.
So proposing that
Thank you for that.
Fireweed to airport. Go ahead, Luke.
Yeah, this does look like a similar situation where the complete streets would likely include the non-motorized improvements in the non-motorized. So I think you probably could remove the Denali Street item from the non-motorized table. I know the Muni has involvement on Denali Street, and so I don't know if there's any input that the folks from the Muni might have on this one, but that would be my assumption.
Thank you, Luke. Aaron, on these projects, do you have a further breakout of the funding that you're using for the fiscal constraint of the overall MTP? That I believe how you've done it is have SDBG within complete streets, and sometimes you'll have TAP or something else in non-motorized. So even if it's an overlap project, it's different funding. Is that how you've been doing these, or?
No, for the MTP, we don't specifically state what type of funding is being used for it. It's a general pot. We just section it off between AMATS, DOT, and Muni funding. It's kind of how we've broken it down.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, we don't have that listed on what we have online, what the funding is. But I believe we made sure to match like for like. So if there is oh, it is on there. Great. Okay.
Just not on the.
Just not on the non-motorized one. Sorry, I'm looking on the non-motorized because it's basically all AMATS funding for the non-motorized one. So we made sure to match up any of the changes would be for AMATS to AMATS, DOT to DOT, or Muni to.
So Member Baldwin Day, could you repeat just one final time what that would read like if we're?
We would actually remove this entirely. This line, the line 34 would actually just go away. But we would recommend adding, so there's a segment here that that is not necessarily captured. And it's this Eagle Street segment, which is a little confusing. The way that this is titled, it says East International Airport Road, but that actually runs parallel to Denali Street. So it's the Eagle Street section that is between International and actually Tudor that is not contiguous because there's actually no sidewalk or like connectivity between Eagle Street and then Denali Street. Eagle Street just runs into Tudor. There's an intersection there at Denali, and then Denali Street continues, all the way to Fireweed. And so I could be wrong. I believe that this Eagle Street segment is already part of the neighborhood greenways project. I think we would need to check that with, no, it is not. I'm getting a head shake no from the AMATS non-motorized expert. So we would need to recommend that be added, that Eagle segment be added as a greenway, which I think could be done in a separate capacity as opposed to maintaining it here in the non-motorized project list. So this would be essentially another duplicative project.
So we would remove item 34 on non-motorized, but then amend at this time, item 28 incomplete streets, or leave as is now and later as the project moves forward. Updates go.
That is a great question. I would defer to our AMATS staff on that question. And I
Would we be amending for the Denali Street one?
think we would be,
Because the complete street one is Fireweed Lane to Tudor. Are you talking about as the greenway?
yeah, where would the greenway fit?
That would be just something we would send a request over to the municipality for them to consider as they evaluate greenway corridors in the future. It's not necessarily something that you have to put into the MTP because we don't do the greenway stuff.
Reasonable. Mr. Colhase, how does that sound to you?
I think it sounds okay. I guess, the non-motorized, this project name is East International to Fireweed. So if we don't amend the language in line 34 under complete streets, do we have the ability to get to international or not? Or does it stop at Tudor?
Well, it really stops at Tudor.
So the description in the non-motorized is incorrect?
I think the non-motorized is a little more flexible than the roads because we typically follow the existing roads when we're doing it.
Okay.
There's no real road connection, but you can make a non-motorized connection that continues over to international at that point. And I think that's where the Greenway
Yeah.
component of it is for.
So I think to answer your question, without me 100% committal about it, I think we could make accommodations for that section between Tudor and international and get there with other funding sources.
That might be a conversation with Mr. Coy.
Yes.
Okay. So that would be, yeah, so that would mean that we would be adding this 3.46 million toward that 16.5 that we're looking for to be able to incorporate the higher PEL. Shall I continue? Yes. Okay. So moving on to line 39. This is 5th and 6th Avenue M Street to Reeve Boulevard. It's rehabilitation between those termini to remove a lane of vehicular traffic on each road and add a separated bikeway, widen sidewalks, with motorized crossing infrastructure. Again, checking my assumptions here with the project manager. This is reflected in Complete Streets 126. Which is 5th and 6th Avenue, Complete Streets I to Reeve, which project would reconstruct 5th and 6th Avenue from I to Reeve, remove a lane of traffic, slow speeds, add protected bike lanes, and upgrade pedestrian infrastructure. I believe that this is also a duplicative project that we could remove. Of course, checking that with those who know more than I do.
Could you repeat the Complete Streets number?
Yes, it is 126.
Any concerns from DOT staff online? Further questions on this one?
I guess I have a question. Would we need to, similar to the previous discussion, would we need to amend the project name and description for Complete Streets 126 to extend it to either L or M? I'm not sure why it was planned to go to M, but
Yeah, I was a little perplexed by that too.
I can't speak on that. I believe that's what was nominated. And so we put it in as is. So I guess if you guys would like to adjust, I think we stopped at L because that was the most logical termini for the road project, the Complete Street project itself. But I don't have an exact answer for you right now as to why it stopped at N.
I guess to clarify my question, Mr. Young, the Complete Streets project stops at I.
Yeah.
So I think at minimum, we'd want to amend that description, go to L.
Yes. I did not realize that said that. So thank you for that catch.
We would want to amend the project description on the Complete Streets project list. Is that?
Yeah, well, line 126 for that project to go from, because it says I to Reeve right now, to have it be L to Reeve.
L to Reeve.
Yes, Mr. Boland?
Hi, Luke Boland, DOT. I agree with the scope amendment there to I. You may also want to amend the scope to go to Airport Heights. Reeve does leave that stretch of 5th Avenue between Reeve and Airport Heights as an area that I would think would also be a good opportunity to adjust.
Any comments on that from the committee or staff? Okay,
Concur, I thought.
So
your terminate.
L to Airport Heights would be the amendment project. Okay. Thanks, Mr. Boland. Okay, so to summarize that one, it would be removing project 39 and non-motorized, and then amending project 126 to be
I
L.
do have a question, Madam Chair, if it's
Yeah.
okay. so the other sort of, I guess the significant difference that I do see is the amount of funding. What is programmed on the Complete Streets project list in line 126 is $30.5 million. And then what is programmed on the non-motorized list is less than half of that, on line 39 at 13.6 million. So I guess we're removing the lesser programmed amount. Okay, so then in that case, we go with the more expensive costed option and we're all good. Is that the thinking?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Go for it. Thank you. Okay, so D moves line 40 from short-term to long-term. So this particular stretch of 40th Avenue suggests construction of an enhanced shared roadway. And the current design of 40th Avenue is actually a little strange. There are some non-contiguous chunks of sidewalk adjacent to it. And it's already a rather wide road. And so my suggestion would be that we move this particular line from short-term to long-term and to request a reevaluation to actually do speed treatments and perhaps some raised crossings here to sort of mitigate the speeds, but to change the project scope and put that into our long-term timeline. And as far as the cost estimate remains the same, we're just shifting from short-term to long-term.
Any comments from the committee on that one? Okay. Line 50. Okay.
Line 50, this is a Fairview non-motorized street network study, which I believe we could move from long-term to short-term. So this would actually be moving up the project timeline so that this actually coincides with the other Fairview projects that we have in short-term. To me, it seems reasonable that we would want a non-motorized street network study before we tackled all of the non-motorized projects that we currently have in the queue. So that was a suggestion to reverse.
Any comments from the committee? Any concerns from staff on either of those actions?
Okay. And then we would be moving line 66. From short term to long term. And this is, we were discussing this as sort of part and parcel of other projects and wondering if this would actually make more sense in a long-term capacity, since we have other projects that are happening or similar projects that are happening in the vicinity that would be improving adjacent non-motorized infrastructure. Hartselle Road is actually in a weird industrial area, and what we're now looking at doing both with Vanguard and also with Brayton as part of the Abbott the Diamond to O'Malley projects, address some of the need for pedestrian infrastructure in this area. And so this might be something we would want to reevaluate as a long-term project. It's $1 million, which is a small-ish savings, but still contributes toward that $16 million goal.
Any comments on that from the committee? '68.
And then finally, 68, this is Glen Highway non-motorized overhead crossing Boundary Avenue to Pathway and Regional Commercial Center, which is Tacotnu. And in reviewing this project, a non-motorized overcrossing at that point, it seems like there are some technical and logistical challenges with making this project possible. And so my proposal is to move this from long-term into illustrative. There is the adjacent crossing now at the pedestrian crossing that accesses to Cottonu just up the highway now at Muldoon.
Questions, comments from the committee?
As I have a comment, and it's not leaning either way, it'd be interesting to know, we won't get the information before we decide on this, interesting to know how much the highway overcrossings that do exist are used. You know, for example, the one that had the roof blow off at down near Brayton or south of Brayton. How much are those used? And I know the intent with this project is to prevent the people who are crossing at grade, and I know there's been some accidents and fatalities there, but how much benefit is there out of building a $10 million crosswalk over a divided highway? I just don't know the answer to that. And again, it won't affect how I vote, just a comment for the record. Thank you.
And that concludes my proposals for funding. And I believe that gets us to the 16.5 million to accommodate the later projects.
Well done. That was some good sleuthing.
Thank you.
That's impressive. Okay, so with that, I suggest that we make a motion just on number 6, just because it is in one sense, changing what the TAC had originally proposed. Are you okay just making one motion just on that after we have public comment? Thank you. But then going back to do 1 through 6 in that way. Yes.
It would be 5 and 6.
Oh, thank you. 5 and 6. Yeah.
I am totally fine however we would like to.
All right. Yeah. Any comments from the public on the items that Member Baldwin Day went through?
We do have a hand up.
Okay, great.
Lindsay Hyduk.
Oh, yes. Hi, Ms. Hyduk. Can you please provide a comment?
Yeah, thank you. I'm Lindsay Hyduk. I serve as the Director of Community Engagement and External Affairs at NeighborWorks Alaska and work in partnership with the Fairview Community Council and the Reconnecting Fairview effort. And I just wanted to echo, thank you for the sleuthing, Member Baldwin Day. I think it's really important and exciting to see the policy committee and you all these different departments and players elevating priorities to make Fairview safer and more connected. And the projects along Hyder Street are part of this long-term vision the community has been working for years. And to work in partnership with the Department of Transportation and the Pell study process to elevate these priorities is really important. So just want to thank the policy committee for this consideration and being really deliberate to make sure that we can move forward on these important issues. Thank you.
Thank you. The other comment?
No, their hands up.
Okay. So, would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, so I move that let's see, what would be the cleanest way to do this? I move that we substitute items A through G for items 5 and 6 in the non-motorized list.
For a second?
I will second.
Any further discussion from the committee?
Do we need to clarify as part of this amendment, the changes we made for, like, I guess not, because that would come at the complete streets discussion regarding L Street and Airport Heights. Yes, so I second with no comments. Thank you.
Would you be cleaner if we did that separately?
Yes, if you could do that, do any of the changes for the 5th, 6th project as a complete street one. I think it would help keep it separated if you could, please.
Okay. So we could dispatch with this and then amend the complete streets after we've wrapped up with this.
Okay, so no further discussion from the committee. Are there any objections to the motion? The motion has passed. Non-motorized items 6 A, B, C, D, E, F, G will replace numbers 5 and 6.
With that, I move to approve the the new list of non-motorized projects for the 2052 MTP.
Excellent.
will
So
that-
we have, go ahead, Member Bowen.
Sorry, thank you. Will that also then incorporate staff's recommendations after meeting with the Fairview folks?
We would need a motion on that for the Hyder pedestrian projects. What you want us to do on those.
So I will amend my motion to further include staff recommendations from the meeting with the Fairview Community Council and others, numbers 1 through 3.
I have no objection to the amendments to the motion.
So the motion on the floor is 1 through 3, except as is, and include number 4.
No, this would be, are those duplicate items, Aaron, or Mr. Young and Alan? Apology.
No, if you're talking about the 1 through 3 further down on the memo, I apologize. That's under the PC action on June
18th.
June 18th. They're different than the ones that are 1 through 3 up above, because the one up above is removing duplicate projects. And then it starts getting into the Hyder pedestrian changes. If you do the 1 through 3 from the June 18th meeting, that'll cover all of the Hyder ones. So you don't need to do the 3 and 4 above, but we'd still need action on 1 and 2 above as well.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense.
Does. Okay, so may I try again?
Yes, please do. And we might want to have project names or numbers to follow, or maybe line numbers as well. We could add that to the motion.
Yes, okay, so, so I move to substitute for items 3 and 4 currently listed on the non-motorized list. So this is update projects on line 15 and 16 and add new Hyder pedestrian boulevard projects to match PEL. I move to substitute with items 1 through 3 under PC action on June 18, 2026. Update projects on line 15 and 16. Update termini, add 3 additional projects. Chester to 20th to 15th, 8th to 3rd, 3rd to Ship Creek, and remove project on line 49 instead of 3 and 4 and non-motorized. So this is, I'm just swapping out.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Are there any concerns, questions on what the motion is from the committee? Okay, is there a second?
I will second that.
Okay. And discussion.
Yeah, I'm in support of that. And then, so will that be an amendment and then we'll take up the non-motorized projects incorporating that substitution?
Yeah, I'd propose that to keep it cleaner.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Okay, hearing no further discussion on the motion. Are there any objections? to swapping out non-motorized items 3 and 4 with June 18th, items 1, 2, and 3 on the non-motorized list. Hearing no objections, motion's passed. Staff need further clarification on the motion?
Oh, ma'am, we're good. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we have items non-motorized 1 and 2 remaining. All right,
So
dialogue on these items. I guess do we have a motion to accept them as is?
I'll move to accept non-motorized items 1 and 2 as written in the staff briefing.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on non-motorized items 1 or 2? Okay, any objections? Hearing none, non-motorized items 1 and 2 are adopted.
do we need to go ahead and then adopt the entire list?
Yes, let's do that. And I can take a shot at reiterating the entire package of non-motorized projects. So, for the record, we have non-motorized, number 1 and number 2, those items as is. Items 3 and 4 are substituted with the June 18th items 1, 2, and 3 in the briefing. Item 5 is removed. Item 6 is removed and it's substituted by items A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay, so with that, I'd suggest a motion to approve this fully amended list of project changes.
Move to approve the non-motorized MTP draft as amended by our previous amendment and articulated by the chair.
Any further
Second.
discussion? Okay, hearing none. We have completed and accepted the list of changes for non-motorized in the MPP. Thanks, everybody.
I would like to move to amend the draft 2052 MTP Complete Streets Project List, item 126.
Okay.
And I would to change the project termini from I to Reeve to L to Airport Heights, and also amend the project description accordingly.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion from committee at this time? Okay, any objections to the motion? Okay, hearing none, that motion has passed. And with that, so Complete Streets item 126 is amended to change the termini to L Street and to Airport Heights. Should we continue on with Complete Streets at this time, or do we want to? Well, maybe that's what we have left. Okay. So perhaps first, Mr. Young and Ellen, could you go through remaining items as changes to introduce us to that, and then we can have public comment as well?
Yes, did you go through them real quick?
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
So the remaining items from the Complete Streets changes from the list provided is number 6 to increase the budget for project on line 89. That's TIP NHS 1. Increase it from 32 million to 80 million. Number 6 is to increase the budget for projects on line 54 through 56. This is to increase, the budget increases to support a new position at 175,000 a year. Over the life of the program would be 4.2 million. So staff does need direction if that is to be approved, where funding would come from for that. And then the 8th item is to include the Safer Seward suite of placeholder projects. The financial analysis to follow.
All right, thank you.
Here's one update, Chair. So for the item, for the number 6, the budget increase for line item, we did get an updated cost estimate from DOT project manager on that. So they actually don't need to increase it to 80 million. They only need to increase it to 66 million total. They just sent that up yesterday, and I sent it out to everybody so you were aware of it. So I just wanted to let you guys know.
Going in the right direction.
Yeah.
But, okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, so as a whole, any comments from the committee, questions and comments before we get to the motions?
So I have questions on this item, the Diamond to O'Malley. Did that cost estimate show us where I apologize, I've not had a chance to look at that. Did that show us where this 34 million in additional funding is needed? And like what specifically that's going to be used for?
Yes, I'll do my best to answer, and then if somebody at DOT would like to correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding based on the email from the project manager is that additional money is needed to help with a grade separated undercrossing and shared use pathway. So the current budget and the tip right now, most of it will be used for the top 3 priorities, which is Brayton and other changes in the area. And then there's a little bit left over, and so they need a little bit more to get up to the point to do that undercrossing. As identified here, the stakeholder advisory committee identified the Scooter Avenue undercrossing as its highest priority solution if additional funding becomes available. It directly addresses the east-west non-motorized connectivity gap and would provide a grade separated shared use pathway and vehicle connection beneath the Seward Highway. The project manager did have a summary that he provided to you all that it goes through the comments that have been heard as part of that stakeholder effort that explains that priority for the undercrossing and also outlines the budget information as well.
Want to have some initial dialogue on the CMAQ funding? Anyone's looked at options?
I think I'm actually, this is a new proposal to me. I'm wondering if we could potentially have some like additional clarity on yeah, I think I have a longer list of questions about this, and I'm wondering if, based on the funding needs, if this is something that we could table to a future meeting and potentially do as an admin mod later.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
I have similar thoughts, Member Baldwin Day. That was a late breaking request from the MOA Traffic Department. And, I think that at this point, I'm not sure I have the information, probably the same information that you're looking for. So
I don't know, is that appropriate? I don't want to throw a wrench in the gears, and certainly not opposed to the concept. I think I just like to really understand what it is that we're doing and potentially also the wisdom of using this funding to staff or to fund a staff position. So I think just a little more dialogue about that would be really helpful for me. But again, I'll defer to those who deal with admin mods and amendments to tell me whether that's a good idea or not.
I don't think it's an issue, so we wouldn't use the CMAQ funding itself for it because I do not believe CMAQ funding is eligible for that kind of position. It would have to be STBG. I think it's just that's the project that they're wanting to put it in, is it's in the CMAQ table. So we'd have to have some further discussions about what is the appropriate project and where to put it. And I'll be honest, it came up at the TAC meeting and I don't think there was a lot of discussion. We didn't have a lot of beforehand discussion on it. So one of my big questions is the muni willing to accept a new position. Because I'd hate for us to put the funding in place and then something happens and it's not going to be utilized. So I think there's time on the staff's end. I don't think it would impact any of us in a negative way. We can always come back later and amend it and put it in appropriately.
That would, yeah, I think that would help. That would help me.
Okay. Let's go to public comment for items 6, 7, and 8 in the complete street list. Are there any comments from the public?
We do have some. Alexa Dobson.
Yes, Ms. Dobson, please go ahead.
Hello, thank you. Alexa Dobson, Executive Director of Bike Anchorage. Just chiming in to support delaying the proposed increase in funding for the Seward Highway O'Malley to Diamond project until we can get a better understanding of what they're looking to do there. It seems strange that the idea of the undercrossing was described as being something that would be nice to have if the funding became available. But that is kind of happening backwards here, like if we're asking to make the funding be available. And there are almost certainly many other places that would benefit significantly more from an increased investment of $30 or $40 million in infrastructure. So I hope we can spend a little bit more time learning about that. Thank you.
Thank you. And any other comments?
Yes. Well, Luke Boland has hand up.
Okay, Mr. Boland, would you like to comment?
Yeah, hi, Luke Boland, DOT. Speaking on the O'Malley to Diamond project, I think the funding increase is appropriate at this point in time, and reason behind that, going through that stakeholder working group, understanding is that there are some desires from that group that are constrained by the current dollar amount of 32 million that are in there. Fully expect that we're going to have multiple conversations moving forward on what scope elements do advance for the O'Malley to Diamond project. I know there's a long history there, but I would like to see what the stakeholder working group recommends if additional dollars are available when it comes to that project.
Okay, thank you.
So another hand up, Brian Harris.
Okay, Mr. Harris?
Hey there, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Hey there, sorry. Brian Harris, DOT interim project manager for the O'Malley to Diamond project. And yeah, I just wanted to sort of share where we're at in the process with the O'Malley to Diamond project. I know that we are at the AMATS TAC and PC committee sort of elaborating our lengthy stakeholder working group advisory committee process that we've been going through for the past almost year now. I think we're on month 10 and continuing. At this point, the stakeholders have prioritized sort of 3 separate areas in the area between O'Malley and Diamond that they had prioritized within the existing funding constraint of $32 million. The conversation of some additional funding did come up, and that did sort of fit with another priority that the stakeholders had informed us that they would be interested in and that they would make a priority if the funding had become available. This $50 million request, which is now I think an additional $34 million request, didn't come from the project team or from the stakeholder working group independently, and it was a request that was made amongst the additional funding available within the fiscal constraint. And so if those funds are available, I do think it would be it appears to be sort of a high priority that these stakeholders have and continue to work toward. Obviously, we don't know the exact design that we're looking at there at the Scooter Academy undercrossing. There were a lot of alternatives and ideas that were tossed on the table as we were going through our preliminary design proposals a few months ago. And so with the additional funding request, if approved, that's certainly something that we would bring all of the stakeholders back into the room for, invite all of the stakeholders in the advisory committee that we've been working with for the past year to continue to terse out what exact proposed solution or design that we'd be looking at there. But I do think it'd be a great opportunity for the stakeholders and a great opportunity for the project to hopefully meet the needs that the community is looking for. Thanks.
Madam Chair. So I have questions. There's no motion on the floor. Is it better that I wait until that point? I have questions of the project team.
Aye.
I'm glad to wait.
Let's wait until after public comment and then we'll circle back.
No problem.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, any other public comments? Okay, seeing none. Let's next, have a motion on the floor unless you want to have some further dialogue before we do.
No, I think my questions could be answered. Well, do I have the opportunity to ask a couple questions of the project team now? Okay, I guess for Mr. Boland or for Ryan, the history of the underpass led to the Academy Vanguard project moving out of an MOA funded bond project into the AMATS world due to cost and due to the impacts to the neighborhood. And I understand there's no specific design now, but do we anticipate that the undercrossing would be not motorized and motorized? Is that the general approach right now?
I believe that would be the general approach. Yes, both motorized and non-motorized improvements.
Thank you. And then go ahead, please.
Sorry. Yeah, and one of the identified purpose and needs that came out of the stakeholder working group that these stakeholders had identified was the east-west connectivity that is currently missing amongst that stretch. And so that was one of the purpose and needs that they had developed with the project team.
Thank you. And another question is, because we have the AMATS project for Academy Vanguard that is moving along, I don't know exactly where they are in design, but I presume, I think the numbers back when this was the full-blown O'Malley to Diamond project, I think they were anticipating shuttling an additional 14,000 cars a day into that neighborhood to the east there. I would just want assurance that, and I know it'll happen, but just put it on the record that the project team for O'Malley to Diamond will coordinate with the Academy Vanguard project team to ensure that both designs work well with each other, accommodate the impacts to the neighborhood, no matter what the final design is for O'Malley to Diamond.
Yep, so that project was actually recently assigned to me, and so I'll be overseeing both and communicating with both design teams as we move through that process. The Academy Vanguard project was recently moved to the illustrative list, as you guys know. But a lot of the design there is currently being held up by the O'Malley to Diamond project and with what happens at that Scooter Academy undercrossing.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, so I want to start making a motion and work through the list.
Is there, what is the, I'm curious to hear from the project team how this has been characterized to the public. So this undercrossing has this been communicated as something that is possible based on the ability of funding, and that's I'd like to, what expectations have been set with community stakeholders at this point with respect to this particular feature or potential feature of the project?
There haven't been a lot of expectations set. We are letting the advisory committee and our stakeholders sort of lead us through design with what best fits their version of improvements in this area. We have recently had a design charrette last week with the stakeholder working group, but we were talking about specific design details on Brayton Drive and Pathway. At that time, we had not received confirmation. We still don't have confirmation that there is available funding with the stakeholders. When we were going through our working group earlier this year in the Scooter Academy undercrossing was brought up by the stakeholders. There were a few different alternatives and preliminary designs that they were pushing out. I think removing on-off ramps at the Academy side intersection to reduce traffic flow. We received public comment and support from different community council members and stakeholders that share a vision for a motorized and non-motorized facility, as long as we're sort of constraining the amount of volume that's going through there. But I'm sorry, to answer your question, there haven't been a whole lot of expectations set. And we will obviously re-engage our stakeholders in the advisory committee and go back to the drawing board and receive their feedback as well as your feedback to, you know, leads through what the scope looks like there.
Thank you. That's helpful. So this being articulated as a high priority for stakeholders, I'm a little bit unclear as to whether this is primarily intended as a non-motorized east-west crossing or a motorized east-west crossing. Can you clarify just a little on that point?
There were different.
Brian, you cut out.
Sorry, there were a few different ideas that were brought forth during our stakeholder workshop when we were discussing the Scooter Academy undercrossing. There were pedestrian-only overcrossings, pedestrian-only undercrossings, and motorized and non-motorized undercrossings. And I believe going forward, we haven't set an expectation, but I do believe that there would be a motorized or a non-motorized and motorized component. And we would certainly listen to our stakeholders' feedback on how that best fits within this project.
What's the proximity of this undercrossing to Abbott and Diamond?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
I'm curious what the proximity is, the distance from this undercrossing to Abbott and Diamond.
I don't have, so I'm not at my desk right now. I don't have a map pulled up in front of me, but it's Academy Drive, where Academy Drive
Sure. Yeah, and Scooter.
turns off right in Scooter.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate
If I
that.
may, this is Stephanie Mormillo. I'm working on the Academy Vanguard project, and the distance from the interchange at Abbott, Diamond, the highway, and Academy Scooter is a half mile. It's a half mile spacing.
Thank Stephanie.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's
no
my
problem.
Yeah.
Madam Chair. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Aaron.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I was just going to say, I know we're not to where we're going to have discussion on a motion yet, but I do think even at this part of the discussion, it is probably worth mentioning the history of this project and, the current, and maybe Aaron Aganelli can speak to this. The current MTP description in the complete streets list is intentional. That was something that the policy committee amended previously, along with the reduction in funding. And we've had on this one a lot of discussion around the nature of the project and a focus on non-motorized and maybe doing a phased approach. And so I guess, Aaron, if you can, if you want to speak to that, great. And then just in terms of making sure we're not putting the cart before the horse, I'm curious, is this a normal process that we would do where we would, the policy committee amend something one way, with policy intent, and then before the sort of revamped public process has even been completed, to then undo what we did previously and increase the funding to allow for more flexibility back in the other direction of vehicular. It just, the timing of this seems weird to me, but perhaps I could be instructed otherwise. Aaron, is that something that you could speak to at all, either of those 2 points? And then maybe if, I don't know, whoever else wants to chime in.
No, unfortunately, I can't really speak to it because it's really up to what the policy committee considers the right approach. I think you outlined it you know, has the public comment period or has the public input been done and finalized to a point where you guys are comfortable with what is being asked of you? That is on you guys. And if you, I can't answer that for you.
I guess let me refine it then. I mean, have you seen that? Have you seen precedent for that type of action on other projects where the policy committee amends something one way, you know, takes intentional action on something, and then there's sort of this ongoing process to kind of like revert it? I mean, is that normal? Have you seen that with other projects? And if you don't feel comfortable answering, that's fine too. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. It just kind of seems, I haven't seen that in the few years since I've been on the policy committee, but maybe I'm mistaken.
From my experience, no, it's not normal. But that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. I think it's also not normal that the project kind of stopped and kind of restarted and had the advisory committee and really has been like trying to get more information from people. I mean, we as staff just attended a direct advisory committee on the pathway design and information to it. That's not something we do very often, I'll be honest. So I think that the approach that has been taken with this project is not normal, but I think it's a good thing. So from my standpoint, I think the project has done a lot of good work to try and get to a point where people have provided their comments. So I'm sorry, I don't have anything else for you on that.
Yeah, that's okay. Thanks.
I think for my part, you know, keeping sort of the history of this project in mind, I'm a little bit hesitant to move in this direction. I mean, as I understand it, and again, please correct me if I'm wrong, because this does predate my time. I just know what I know from past meetings and meeting minutes. You know, the intent here really was to constrain this project fairly narrowly and to focus on non-motorized connectivity and safety, you know, with some updates to interchanges, existing interchanges and things like that, and existing frontage roads. And so I feel a little hesitant to, as Member Volin said, move in a direction that feels very distinct, particularly when, you know, one of the challenges with that Academy Vanguard project was the amount of traffic that was going to be routed into a neighborhood that currently only has, unless I'm mistaken, a one-way access road as its point of both ingress and egress, unless you go around to Abbott. And so, yeah, I'm wrestling with this one a little bit, and I'm wondering if we could. I mean, I understand that there's a public process that's occurring, but I think we also have a responsibility to think really carefully about what kind of precedent we are setting in terms of allocating funds to projects. And I think related to that is this reality that we continue to run up against, which is the fact that we don't actually have, at least on the municipal level, a cohesive strategy about where we do intend to allocate significant funding to non-motorized projects. And because we don't have that strategy mapped out, we don't have that non-motorized highway network developed. It's harder for me as a policy committee member to say, you know, yes, let's double the cost of a project from 32, you know, to an additional 34 million to 66 million to facilitate an undercrossing that, you know, may or may not have utility in our non-motorized network. So yeah, I have a little feeling some friction on this one. And yeah, I'm wondering what our options are as far as making this choice now versus making this choice in the future. You know, what is our flexibility here? And maybe Mr. Young and Alan, you can speak to that.
Well, so again, we're in the middle of an MTP update. That's what we're doing right now. So from staff's decision or staff standpoint, it really should be now is kind of when you guys want to make a decision on these things. Because part of the problem we have is our next step after we're done with this is do the modeling for the MTP. And an undercrossing is something that would be significant enough to put into the model for us to see what kind of impacts would have on the system. So if you didn't act on it now, the next opportunity, you could act on it next time you're going to see this, but then we'd have to go back and do modeling. If you don't want to act on it as part of this MTP update, then the next process is once this MTP update is done, we can go back and do an amendment to the MTP, which could start as soon as this current MTP is done, whenever that is going to be.
One thing I'd suggest is before we reject a recommendation from a stakeholder group that's been working hard to present us with options, that we at least get a bit of a presentation on the work that they have been doing since the policy committee has recommended that change in scope. Our staff have certainly taken the policy committee's comments to heart and have gone back and redone a lot of work on that design, and they feel that presenting this increased budget will provide greater value back to the public. So I'm understanding project design and transportation can certainly be dynamic, but I do believe that they've had ample opportunity to hear and have further input. But I'd suggest that this is a project that perhaps we, not that we want to table things for long, but at least that we have this opportunity if we're considering not moving forward with this project. But perhaps we could have a motion at this time and we could work through it as an action item. Well, I would move to include item number 6 on the complete streets list, which would increase the funding from 32 to 66 million on line 89.
I will second for discussion.
Okay, thank you. All right, further discussion.
If I may, Madam Chair, I'll jump in. So I was in project management when the O'Malley to Diamond project and the Academy Vanguard project I mentioned earlier were really kind of in the throes of agony, and there was a lot of conflict at that time between DOT and the municipality, and between the O'Malley to Diamond project and the Academy Vanguard project, to the point where at that time, the two sides were not listening to each other. And that's why the municipality stopped bond funding for that project, for the Academy Drive project, at which point it became an AMATS project. And I'm kind of bouncing around a bit, reading this document that the project team provided and their description of the stakeholder involvement. I think they have made huge strides based on my recollection of what was going on at the time. And also what Mr. Harris said, his comments. So I am interested in, if there is an opportunity, I would be very interested in hearing directly from the project team and from stakeholders, recognizing that the AMAT staff timeline is growing shorter as I speak. So I guess those are my comments at this point, Madam Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Any further comments on this one?
So I'm sorry, do we have a motion on this then?
Yeah, the motion is to adopt the recommendation to increase the budget from 32 to 66 million.
This is for number 6?
Number 6, yes, thank you.
For 32 to 66 million, or for 32 to 80 million?
The 66 million.
Okay.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, yeah, if I could speak to that, I am likely not inclined to support this at this time, just because of the prior work that I've done on the policy committee around this project. And at one point, I had even moved to cancel the project altogether, and then the issue of risk of federal payback was brought as the rationale for, we really have to keep this, but we will revisit the scope and sort of go back to the drawing board. And, I think at the time that was sort of the big compromise. And this just kind of feels like something that has really been pushed out and out and out with, I don't want to speak to anybody's intent, but it feels to me like we still haven't been able to let go of a vision of that prior project. And yeah, I just worry about, as this moves forward, we move too far back in the other direction. And I really think that we need to think about how projects have off ramps when they no longer meet the needs of the community. When we do, when we have done predictions about trends that we think are going to happen 2 decades ago, we forecast population trends and we forecast traffic demands, and actually the opposite of those predictions comes true, then we need to be able to recalibrate and not have this sort of sunken cost fallacy that we need to keep moving the project forward. So I don't know. I feel like this one has been much discussed, as I already said. And so I think I am, again, just not inclined to support this item at this time. And I think that the 30 something million dollars that we're proposing to increase this project by, there's probably other needs that could be put toward. And I'd be interested in exploring that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
If I might, Madam Chair.
Yes.
So I'm looking at the stakeholder summaries that were provided to us yesterday. And I think I want to be really clear that I am not opposed to the original scope of this, which is really clearly focused on non-motorized facilities and multimodal traffic safety. And if a non-motorized specific undercrossing is useful at this location, then I am in support of that. And the reason for that is what I'm seeing in this stakeholder summary, which has a really strong statement of I think multiple strong statements of what is important, and the top 1, 2, 3, the top 3 are all with respect to non-motorized connectivity. And then the very next transportation issue that's identified is speed concerns on Brayton Drive access, and protecting residential communities east of the Seward Highway at Academy Drive. So those are the things that were identified. Those are the top 6 identified transportation issues from that first stakeholder meeting as recorded by the project team. And then what followed in the second meeting is really similar. Non-motorized and active transportation facilities, north, south, and east, west. Concerns about Brayton Drive speed and access, protection of residential communities continue to be at the top of those lists. And so taken together, I hear a really strong interest in a non-motorized undercrossing, and I have no issue with that. I think it's the inclusion of motorized facilities in that area that really makes a red flag go up for me. And so I would like to hear a far more robust justification from the project team with respect to that element, that inclusion of motorized facilities here, when there are adjacent motorized facilities at Diamond and Abbott, which are useful for providing that east-west connection in order for me to feel comfortable increasing funding for this, particularly to this degree. Because as I understand it, the intent of this project really was to make minor modifications to the motorized facilities and significant updates to non-motorized and multimodal safety. And that, I think, really remains my interest in this project. So and until I can understand far more clearly the justification for the duality of facilities, I don't think I can support a wholesale increase to the project budget. Not that I don't support the concept, but because I think there's some scope work that needs to be really clear. So I don't think I can support this.
Thank you. I would like to ask our pre-construction engineer just for an update on the scope, if that's okay. I'd like to understand a little bit more for the purposes of the MTP, you know, and we're not programming it in the tip, but what do we need in the MTP so that we can give direction back to the stakeholder working group? Because there could be a scenario in which we do move this forward. But then before it gets into the tip for additional programming, we have that opportunity to very much dig into the scope and make sure it's acceptable. But yeah, Luke, could you comment on that, the scope where it's at currently and what you really need in this MTP to align with the stakeholder advisory group?
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you, Luke Boland, DOT. So I think at this point, it's a good opportunity for us to get this back into the MTP to allow that stakeholder working group and the public involvement piece to play out. I think one of the things that we're hearing loud and clear, and I think would be beneficial, is bringing back some of the scenarios for that 97 Suitor undercrossing to the policy committee to show the different scenarios that we've been working through with that stakeholder working group, which I know, there were claims of complete interchange at that location, which I don't think is what's actually supported. This isn't a capacity connection piece. I think this is something that's going to be more comfortable for non-motorized users to cross the highway than what you see at the intersection of Diamond, Abbott, New Seward. In terms of delivery timeline too, I think taking advantage of this opportunity with the MTP allows this stakeholder working group and public involvement to continue to play out. I know that there are other priorities within Anchorage where we'd like to spend money, but given a lot of the work that we did on the old project, there is right-of-way purchased for the scenarios that were being talked about with the stakeholder working group right now. There are plans to relocate utilities. So a lot of that stuff that holds up other projects has already been done for this. And while we'll have tweaks there, this could be a project that could be brought to this community faster than we can see other improvements around the state. So hear the concerns loud and clear, but I guess that's I think there's an opportunity here to keep this moving as fast as possible for good improvements for the community.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Mr. Boland, since we're talking about a funding increase and not, what prevents the project team from moving forward on the path that we've already outlined with the existing 32 million at this time? I mean, what's the barrier to continuing the project and leaving the 34 million as a question mark on the table?
Yeah, again, Luke Boland, DOT. I think a lot of the commitment from DOT is that we would go back out and we would look at the needs of the project and what the community desires are. And that's where we're at right now, is continuing down that road. The process that we're in right now, I think, we can continue to move forward with the stakeholder working group. We can come up with the recommendations from that public input process, and we could bring a more refined scope forward at a later date once all that's finalized, and look at an MTP amendment at that point in time. As staff mentioned, there is modeling associated with that, so that's probably not a quick thing, whereas it could be incorporated in this now. But we could continue to progress in the direction that we are and deal with this at a later date. I just think it ends up ultimately delaying improvements. And
what's our current timeline for being at 95% design?
I probably defer to project manager Ryan Harris, or looks like we do have somebody from Jacobs online. I don't know if we have a firm date on that, as we're kind of going through a public process that's a little bit open-ended. But Ryan, do you have an estimate there?
Yeah, hi, Ryan Harris, DOT. At this point, we really don't have an estimate on when we're going to hit 95% design as we go through this process. We're still working through our advisory committee and stakeholder working groups. We have more design threats planned with our stakeholders. And then again, with the big question mark of what or if comes to be with the Scooter Academy undercrossing, that just I think continues to delay that 95% design. And also not only the O'Malley to Diamond project, but if we don't, I'm not trying to force the policy committee into giving us an answer today, but the more I think we delay or we put a question mark on the undercrossing potential, the more also impacts the Academy Vanguard project, as that project is sort of waiting for some more clear, concrete answers with aspect to the O'Malley to Diamond project. So,
and I mean, on the current pathway, hypothetically, when would you expect to have the kind of clarity that a Academy Vanguard would need from you?
I'm sorry, as it is now, under the $32 million constraint without the Scooter Academy undercrossing?
Yeah, irrespective of funding, I mean, given your current process right now and, you know, taking the funding out of the equation on your current timeline, when would you have design work sufficiently completed that Academy Vanguard would have what they need to move forward with their project?
I see. I think the Academy Vanguard project, and I have both project managers from both design teams online here, so they can also chime in as well. But for both projects, just I think knowing the potential design, knowing that there will be a Scooter Academy undercrossing will propel both of those projects forward, as the traffic impacts at the on Academy Road is obviously we're sort of in a wait and see period to see what happens with that Scooter Academy undercrossing also. So I think if we had an answer, both would immediately be propelled. Academy Vanguard and Stephanie, I think we've had our local review. We have not yet had our plans in hand review. If we did have an answer on the Scooter Academy undercrossing, I would anticipate that plans in hand review would be on the table for, I would say, mid next year, Stephanie. That's our 65% design review. Yeah, hi, Stephanie.
Yes, and say we're waiting to kind of, this is Stephanie Mormello, the project manager for the Academy Vanguard project. So some of the big unknowns here is that originally, you know, if there is some sort of undercrossing, and depending on whether or not the frontage road goes two-way, and getting updated traffic analysis numbers has pretty big implications on how we treat the intersections on our project, because we have the intersection of Academy Vanguard itself and then the intersection of Abbott Road. And we've looked at a number of alternatives, but actually having, I guess, a concrete idea of what will be included makes a big difference on what will be funded and ultimately constructed with this project. And the fear we have is, like, if we move forward without knowing, you know, really what is going to be included with the highway project, it's a constriction, you know, I mean, everything's connected, and making sure that we are using the public money in the appropriate manner and not designing in a constriction in any way. So it just, right now we are postponing until we have a better idea of what is happening here. And just from the public outreach that we've had, yes, there are concerns with the original proposal of having an interchange and having a significant amount of traffic added to here. The question comes down to whether or not you can provide that undercrossing without having connections to the highway, because that does make big differences as far as the volumes go, even with vehicular volumes on the corridor. So we just want to make sure that we are, like we said, designing what's necessary.
Thank you, Ms. Mormello. That's really helpful. So I think my question though remains unanswered, which is, at what point in this design process would you be making a final determination about whether or not an undercrossing is appropriate? Is it the kind of thing now where if the money is available, the undercrossing is going to happen? Or are we saying, if the money is available, we'll consider an undercrossing and then maybe take it off the table, because those are two separate propositions.
Yeah, and thanks for clearly laying it out as such. I think if the funding was available, we would certainly get our advisory committee back in the room and discuss how to best move forward, knowing the funding is available for that Scooter Academy undercrossing, and receive their feedback. For the past year, I think we've been relying heavily on the advisory committee to sort of lead us through the potential preliminary concepts that we're working toward now. And that's I think the same path that we would go down with knowing that there was funding available. We wouldn't say this is something that we will build. I think that we would approach them in the manner that we've been approaching them for the past year. So now with this new funding constraint, what proposals and what ideas do you want to bring to the table? And I think that's how we would approach that. I will say though, I think during one of our stakeholder workshops, when we were prioritizing concepts without a funding constraint, we did offer the opportunity, if a no build opportunity, and I don't think there was any support from anyone in the group for a no build. I think everybody in the group, in the advisory committee, and Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, was looking at some sort of improvement there at the Scooter Academy undercrossing.
Yeah, Julie Trudeau with Jacobs, project manager for the Diamond to O'Malley project. The stakeholders over the last year have developed 6 different options at Scooter Academy, separate from other alternatives that they developed along Brayton, O'Malley, and Diamond. They spent quite a bit of time, even in later meetings, continuing to noodle over what the correct solution was for grade separated crossings for bikes and peds that connected pathways and a motorized crossing. And so when we got to the prioritization of alternatives, we gave the stakeholders funding constraints. Some options were $1 and some options were $5. Like you can't afford it because you can only spend $4 on the project. And so that's where we had 2 rounds of prioritization or voting by our stakeholders. Round 1 was, you have $4 to spend. How would you spend it? What do you want to prioritize on the project? And that's where we landed with 3 options and stakeholder support in what you see in the document. We also said, if funding was not a constraint and you don't have to pick anything, would you opt to still continue to advance something within the 26 different options that the stakeholders developed over the last year? And Scooter had 3 different options that they voted on that were outside of the funding ranges. They voted 3 for one of the options, 3 for another one, and then 6 for a crossing that had grade separated bike and ped pathway facilities on both sides. And it was one of the motorized options. They looked at 2 options that were just bike ped crossings, like the bridge ped structures that you see. And they were, go ahead.
Can I interrupt for a moment? Because we're not in public comment at this time. So I just want to make sure it's okay with the committee members that you continue. Is that
okay? I can stop.
Okay, yeah.
Answer it.
No, thank you. Please continue with where you were at. I just needed to check in.
Okay. Yeah, so there were strictly bike ped crossing options that were looked at, and a combination of both. And some of them had bikes and peds on both sides. Some of them had bikes and peds on one side. And the option that they voted on was a grade separated crossing that connected pathways and a vehicular crossing. So that's the one that we included in the memo. We told the stakeholders from the very beginning what was in the NTP, which did say this project may include an undercrossing at Scooter. We didn't say that's a commitment or a promise. We said, we want to hear what your recommendations are to the DOT, and they came up with several different recommendations and options for the project. And so when they voted, that's when DOT decided to come back to your organization to see if there was additional funding to support that unfunded component. So,
Thank you very much. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was.
thanks.
Okay, so right now there is a motion on the floor, and that's to accept item number 6 under complete streets with the modification that it is increased from 32 to 66 million, not 80 million. So at this point, is there further discussion, or can we call for a vote?
I have a question for the project manager, if I may,
Yeah.
Madam Chair. For, I guess for Ryan or for one of the design project managers, Mr. Harris, I'm sorry. So the themes and issues and needs are articulated in the document we received. Talk about non-motorized connectivity, but they also talk about speed concerns and protecting the community to the east there. If this were to move forward, this amendment were to move forward, are there opportunities for the design team to further consider protecting that neighborhood to the east? To I see that the sketches right now do not show off ramps from Brayton. I don't know if that's the right word, off ramps from Brayton into the neighborhood. That certainly is a change from what was on paper 9 or 10 years ago. Are there opportunities to further protect that neighborhood as you consider stakeholder input?
Yes, absolutely. We're still in the very preliminary, I wouldn't even say design, but looking at preliminary alternatives for what we're looking at there. And so if this were an option that they wanted to move forward with, we would have that conversation with some of the potential options that we're looking at Brayton, the on-off ramps or lack of on-off ramps at Academy Drive. And I believe they were also looking at potentially removing an on-ramp on the other side of Scooter Academy. And so those are absolutely conversations that we'd bring back to the stakeholder working group and be open to listen and hear what their ideas would be there to mitigate speeding, traffic conflicts, things like that.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Thank you, Madam Chair.
One more comment from me, I think. Yeah, I just want to say that I really appreciate the fact that we are taking stakeholder engagement so seriously on this project. I also want to point out that I think there's a line that we need to be very careful that we do not cross when it comes to stakeholder engagement. And so when the policy committee sets a framework for a project and identifies a scope, and then we go to the community and the community wishes to move outside of the boundaries of that scope, I think we need to ask ourselves questions about whether or not we are actually setting policy or not, or whether we are allowing the community to drive policy. And I think there's a back and forth, there's an exchange of ideas that's really important. But I also think it's dangerous for us to start to indicate to the public that they can advocate for project expansion and then we will fund it out of hand because they've asked for it. And I think we're moving into an environment where we will not have the financial capacity to do that. And I think we need to be very, very careful about setting that precedent and telling a community, if you come to us with these ideas, if you say, hey, this is the cookie I would like, we will grant you the cookie. So I think we are walking ourselves into some pretty dangerous territory if this is the route that we're going to go with project design. I think asking the public to inform a design is great. Asking the public to expand a design beyond its original scope and statement of purpose is teetering into shaky ground.
Well, I would just say, yeah, thanks for the public's input on the project. Sometimes we only have so much funding for a project, so when we do put out a design, we can only do so much, and we get that community feedback on what they believe the ones that are using that area really need. We can't always do that, that's for sure. This is National Highway System, National Highway Performance Program funds, which are managed statewide by the Department of Transportation. And here in this metropolitan planning area with the AMATS body. So I hope we can move and have further conversations so that we can set policy that's informed also not only by our own experience, but by the public's requests. So yeah, any further comment, or should we call for a vote? Aaron, can you do roll call, please?
Yes, ma'am. Member Voland,
No.
Member Baldwin Day?
No.
Member Frank?
Yes.
Member Key?
Yes.
And Member Colas?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion passes. Sorry.
I apologize, sir.
Okay, motion passes. So complete streets number 6, line 89 increases from 32 to 66 million. Thanks everyone for very helpful conversation. And I'd like to kind of have a discussion briefly and go on to item number 8, just because of the topic of stakeholder engagement on NHS. And we have received since the last week where we had extensive dialogue during our special committee, we had received many comments or some formal letters, which was helpful to understand, where the different stakeholder groups were at. And on stakeholder engagement, it did make me want to question, well, what had we actually done before since the project start? And in its current inception, which is milepost 98 to 118, or since that project inception, we had formed a formal stakeholder working group similar to the advisory group that we're talking about in O'Malley to Diamond. And they had met from, I believe, June 2023 up until May 2025 was the date of our records when we put together that draft EA. So they had met formally 12 times. But beyond that, we have had 61 formal engagements with community centers, schools, at schools for open houses, with our agencies. And so given that, led to the design where we're at now, but we would like to, as a commitment to the policy committee, the municipality would like to put together a formal statement of what we can and what we should commit to as far as engagement on this project moving forward. So with that, because we don't have it right now, I would like to table vote on number 8 to tomorrow's policy committee meeting in hopes that we could amend the agenda tomorrow to take it up, at which point we will have something in writing for everybody to look at, in which, we can discuss that comprehensively, including an extended public comment period, as well as a open house. Once again, just these are some things that we need to do repeatedly throughout projects as they expand, especially these longer complex projects. So I would appreciate tabling it. So I guess before we do so on Seward Highway and have a motion on the floor, is there discussion by the committee? Then we should go to public comment, right, in this case?
Yeah, we did public comment earlier when you listed 6, 7, and 8. Yeah, but we're welcome to do public comment again if you like.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you. Well, I would move then to postpone or table number 8, and would like to take it up with an amended agenda at the July 16th meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second that for discussion.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so discussion.
If I may, Madam Chair, for staff, is postponing this to tomorrow? Does it meet with, my impression would be yes, but does it meet with the confines of Robert's rules and it could be taken up tomorrow?
Yeah, as long as you guys amend the agenda at the beginning of the meeting to add this item, if you want to take up action on it, we can do that, yes. It's something we've done before where we've amended agendas to add action items at the meeting.
If I make another comment, Madam Chair. So you referred to some feedback you received. I think the committee and staff received a letter from Community Development Director Bob Dole, which is probably one of the pieces of information you're referring to. So appreciate your willingness to DOT's willingness to embrace that sentiment and take a stronger look. So we would then expect to see perhaps something in writing from the department before the meeting tomorrow. Is that your anticipation?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Mhm. With more than, an hour to review. So, thank you. Mhm. Mhm. Further discussion? Aaron, can you do a roll call vote on this, please?
Of course, sorry, just a second. Okay, Member Voland?
Motion is to table, correct?
Yeah, to table to the July 16th PC meeting tomorrow.
Okay, I'll vote yes.
Okay, Member Baldwin Day?
Yes.
Okay, Member Frank? Okay, Member Keith?
Yes.
And Member Clays?
Yes.
It passed
Okay.
5-0.
Okay, so the motion to table Safer Seward Highway to the July 16th meeting as an amended agenda item for tomorrow is approved. So that leaves us with is item number 7, which is the CMAQ. The increasing budget for projects with CMAQ and STBG funds for a position. Instead of reading it out loud, it'll be item number 7, incomplete streets. So their dialogue or like to make a motion?
If we do, question for member, sorry.
Yes.
Question to Mr. Nguyen, if we just don't take this up, then it is by default not included.
Correct.
In MTP, is that correct?
Correct. We will not act on it as staff unless you direct us to.
Could we, sure to whom we would direct this request? I think I heard a general sentiment that this is an intriguing possibility and potentially more information and more clarity is needed with respect to this item. Would we direct staff to make a request for that clarity from the requester of this item? Yes, Mr. Coyce.
May I respond? Stepping out of my role as chair and into the public works role, the request came from Traffic Director Brad Coy, and he's on leave for the next 2 weeks. So I think getting that specificity that we all might want will be challenging in the framework of, particularly if we vote tomorrow on the complete MTP. I think that holding this item to wait for more information is, I think, given the scale of it, it's relatively small in the big picture. I think it's somewhat counterproductive.
Mr. Nguyen, if we were to move forward with this as opposed to tabling it to a future meeting and working on this as an admin mod of some kind, would we need to give you direction today on where the 4.2 million would need to come from in this project list?
Yes, right now we are fiscally constrained for the AMATS funding, so we have, our money and our revenue, our expenditures and revenues are equal basically. So if you want to add additional funding, take it from somewhere. And most of our projects have been cost estimated out, so I caution against reducing a cost estimate for a project. We'd have to go back and kind of verify if that is an accurate reduction or not. So it kind of has put us in a little bit of a bind because it kind of came out of nowhere. I'll be honest, it kind of came out of nowhere at the TAC meeting and we didn't have an opportunity to find out the information of how could it be paid for.
Madam Chair and Member Ball, just before you might make a motion, I would also offer, if I could step a little bit out of my policy committee role and back into this employee role. There is a process that we typically use for adding positions to departments. And I fully understand Mr. Coy's intent here and the need, but that process is not, we've not had the benefit in looking through that process, working through that process. So I can't speak to the very specific need for the position. I believe it's titled as a traffic signals analyst.
Correct.
But I can't speak to the need, and certainly the municipal process is really geared, at least in part, towards making sure we have funding for a position, and this would be outside funding, but we still always want to look at the need and the organizational efficiencies. So offer that comment as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
So could it help if we, for the technical advisory committee who did this forward, can we just make a motion to reject it at this time until there are certain approvals and more information. Would that be helpful for direction?
I believe it would.
Okay. There's such a motion?
I did interrupt Member Baldwin David, so I just want.
No, yeah, so moved.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is to not approve item 7 and complete streets with the direction back to the technical advisory committee to provide more clarity on the approvals that we have the approvals necessary for the position and also where that funding recommendations on where the funding would come from. So that is a motion on the floor.
Second.
All right, any further discussion on this one?
I guess I do have a question for staff. The way the motion is framed, that would not preclude us from voting tomorrow on the entire MTP. Is that correct?
Correct. This is just this particular item.
Thank you.
I do have a question for you. Is there a time frame that you want to associate with this item? Like, do you want it brought back in a specific amount of time, or is it just kind of open-ended at this point?
Mr. Coyce, I think for you with your public works hat on, is there a time frame that would be advantageous in terms of moving into a new budget cycle and those kinds of things? You know, is there a point at which we would need to have some sort of determination made on the AMAT side of things?
Putting on that hat, I would say, you know, the drop dead would be when the assembly picks the budget up in November, ideally, so that the administration could look at it. I would think something in the mid to late August timeframe would be beneficial.
Okay. So thinking about our meeting schedule, Mr. Laneyland, do we have capacity at the August TAC meeting for this to be something that gets discussed, and or perhaps we notify Mr. We need some additional information at that time?
We could do that, you know, because it's a small enough change. It could also be something that we wait and discuss it as part of the public comment period and bring it back to you all after, as part of the public comment period, work with the Muni and get everything in order and provide that as a comment from staff, because it's a small dollar amount that we're talking about here that includes any of the approvals or the process that the Muni has, and then recommendations from staff on how to fund it. I think that could be a good way. So then we're not, you know, rushing and scrambling to try and get you guys something and kind of like throwing it at you and asking you to vote on it before everything's in place, if that works for you all.
Seems reasonable to me.
Okay.
Do we need a specific once we've dispensed with the motion on the floor, would an additional action be helpful to direct you to do that work?
I guess you could just do it as a friendly amendment to the existing motion if you want. It seems like everybody's in agreement, but it would be helpful to have that as kind of an acknowledged, everybody's okay with us to work on this and then bring it back as part of the public comment period for your guys' review once that's done.
So the motion then would be to reject this item, and what did we say we were communicating to the TAC?
Further information is needed
Okay.
on approvals of the position and where the funding would need to come from.
Okay. And requesting that AMAT staff work in the interim and provide additional context as part of the public comment on MTP.
They're seconded.
I'll second that.
Just be-
Yeah, friendly.
For friendly
I was gonna-
Okay. Is there any opposition? Anyone opposed to this amended motion? Anyone opposed to the motion now on the floor? Okay, hearing none. Item number 7 is not approved at this time, going back to the Technical Advisory Committee for more information. And that AMAT staff will work with them to do so. So we have with that officially taken action on all items with one outstanding action item, which was tabled until tomorrow. I'm missing anything on here.
Yes.
Okay.
So I want to draw your attention back to the document that I laid in front of you all for the Pell and MTP Ingrid Gamble projects. So what you have is the first project is the Pell project, the second is the MTP, and we are asking is for the committee to approve the update of our MTP projects to match the Pell descriptions. And going back to the earlier discussion, this would include the pedestrian facilities for Ingrid and Gamble that were previously taken out of the non-motorized.
Good question. Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes.
on your sheet, Ms. Brown, sorry, on your sheet, I had a question. The second line, complete streets project 118. I thought that might have been a different project number, but I may have misread. See 118 as turning an upgrade.
Sorry, line 132.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, it is on line 132, the project is CPS 1.
Okay, it's the project number. Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
So then I guess the Gamble Street project, that's the project number as well, not the line number. So that is correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just have to be smarter than this. Friend.
No, well, I put the Pell in there to indicate what that was, and then I have the line item for the MTP, but I wanted to make it consistent.
Okay, so we have lines 132 and lines 138 that we would like to update with the current Pell name and scope.
So moved.
Okay, so the motion's on the floor.
Second.
It's seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Any objections to the motion from the committee? Motion is passed. So lines 132 and 138, Ingress Street 3rd to 15th, Gamble Street 3rd to 15th are both being updated to reflect the Pell's current description. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so back to staff. Are there any further actions that we believe are needed? Time?
Just second chair.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so the only remaining thing is to have the fiscal assumptions.
Okay, just when we thought. Then there's fiscal constraint. Yay. Thank you very much. Yes, that would have been spots. Okay, well, to start out with, would you please present what the fiscal constraint, the funding source tables are?
Yes. So what you have in front of you, the 2 pages, the first page shows the capital funding sources for the revenue for the length of this project, so 2026 to 2052. It is broken down between road revenue, bike, ped, rail, and then transit and railroad. So you can see each of the years and what the funding will be. Each of the funding sources does have a note that is attached to it that is on page 2, which discusses how we came to these numbers, typically with historical information and then information from DOT and the MUD. We followed the similar sort of protocols that we did the last update.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the public on the funding source table?
Sorry, just a second. Check it.
Okay, and I suppose any discussion from the committee before we make a motion?
I have just a couple of questions. I'm curious why it's, we're reflecting no capital funding in HSIP in 29 and 30.
Wasn't we?
Yeah, we reflect whatever we're given from the state for the funding that is there for those years, so it reflects what we have in the tip. And I'll note real quick, we may actually need to hold off on this item because of the Safer Seward. I forgot, there's some discussion about Safer Seward and how that's going to be funded, and it may change some of the funding and fiscal assumptions. So happy to help answer more questions, but I would recommend we wait to do this until after the discussion or the item is taken up tomorrow.
I have a question. Madam Chair. So for Mr. Young and Ellen, so looking at under the road revenue sources, the Moy Capital Road bonds, looks like somewhat of just a mathematical increase over time. How are those numbers derived? Is that from your modeling or?
So that's based on historical information and then applying the inflation.
Okay, thank you.
What is our percentage assumed increase for inflation?
For inflation, it's 4.5 for the first, it's from 2031 to 2041, and then it's 3.5 for 2042 to 52.
The cost of
Huh?
Is that cost of revenue?
Oh, that's for the project cost revenue is 2.4 for the entirety of the program.
2.4. Okay.
Do you,
Thanks.
Yeah, it's not, it's not.
not much. Yeah. Do you have anything written down for how in our procedures about how we apply that percentage? So we have like our construction or our manuals or construction manuals that set a percentage. Just curious if you have something to give that guidance.
Like, do we have anything written for like AMAT's policies and procedures of how
Yeah, revenue project. Okay.
we just base it on what we've done in past MTPs?
Okay. And maybe something we want to take up at one point. We use 3% within our STIP. So keeping them aligned could really help just because we'll end up programming dollars that match, ultimately what's in the tip. But it's something for us to think about, probably not today, but I would suggest we increase that value for revenue.
Okay. I did use the historical information from the consumer report for price. Yes, consumer price index, sorry, for certain chunks of years, and that was the average that came out. So
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Yonganailen, a question for you, just for order of operations tomorrow. So, if I'm understanding you correctly, based on how we deal with the Safer Seward Highway projects, we'll need to sort out the difference in available funding in some fashion. Is that correct? Before we can approve this document?
Yes, correct. The portion that's within the MPO boundary is more expensive than what we have funding available based on what we've provided in the memo for you all.
Okay.
So we would just need to know how to make up that difference. And is that through an increase in the revenue assumptions? Is it any kind of commitment from the state that additional funding will come to us above and beyond the historical amounts? Because everything we do is based on historical. Or is it going to come from other projects that we have to reduce down? I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, just saying those are some of the options. And so depending on what option is selected by you all, it could impact what these assumptions are.
Yeah, thank you. And because National Highway Performance Program funds are budgeted at a statewide level, we would simply, in our STIP and planning documents, just show that those funds go dollar for dollar to the metropolitan planning area. Just like when a project is canceled or postponed, they are then removed and then again budgeted at that statewide level. So it would be just that transactional level that we would then catch up with on our next STIP amendment. We would see the changes, which would enable a tip then to use that for fiscal revenue projections.
I need that explained again. So I'll do homework.
I can illustrate briefly just because it is nuanced. Say if there's $100 million project that we're adding to the metropolitan planning area. So within the STIP, our planning document over the next 4 years will then show 100 million going to the tip in the AMATS area. So we would then put it in the tip, but first for the metropolitan, so for the MTP, we will also show the 100 million goes into the MPA. We wouldn't otherwise use those funds in our general planning documents. But the STIP and TIP are where that would be programmed, and you would see the transfer of the statewide program into the MPA. So we don't need to budget. We don't have to add or remove within the AMATS fiscal constraint or the funding source table here, because we would be adding to it to increase the funds to meet the project requirements.
Okay. So so when we're looking at remaining revenue from the memo and the 2026 dollars in millions, and there's 259.69 million available in DOT revenue. I'm understanding you correctly. This is DOT revenue that has already somehow been earmarked to the MPO, and then there's like an additional pot of funding available that supplements this that we don't necessarily have visibility into. Is that accurate?
Are you looking, I'm sorry, what is that, page 4 of the memo?
Yeah, looking at page 5. Page 5 of the memo shows that there's $269 million remaining in revenue from DOT, which leaves, if we're looking at what's inside of boundary, 525 million and change.
I understand. Yeah, thank you. It's a little,
So where did the 256 million actually come from? If
that becomes from our formula funds as part of the NHPP program. So funds that are statewide, budgeted statewide, it isn't necessarily a plus or minus within it. There isn't a negative. We're not over programmed here within the MTP. So there isn't we're not over programmed by 150 million. If I'm reading this table correctly, we would simply program those statewide funds to be spent within the MPA. Just as if there was a project that was postponed or pushed out, that would then it would go to other statewide projects. So this is just a statewide fund source, and this is tracking what's the movement in and out of the boundary. But yes, there are certainly the other funds that are available for statewide projects. But we track what's spent within the MPA in the fund source table.
does DOT have fiscal constraint in the same way that AMATS does?
We absolutely have fiscal constraint in our STIP.
Okay.
It's about a 100-page document. So if you like spreadsheets, that's a good one.
I've seen it.
But in that you would see, and we do prepare a fiscal constraint also for the TIP itself, so that you can see dollar for dollar that, there is the funds being spent in the TIP. And we've certainly struggled with trying to get them to line up dollar for dollar, but the way that our TIP and STIP schedules are, they don't always do that. So as long as we're we're doing our best to stay as aligned as possible. Federal Highways and FTA have been okay with that, but with this, with the MTP, we would simply be adding those funds to the MTP document. And we would program them officially within the 4-year window of the STIP and TIP.
I don't think I'm still entirely clear on where exactly those funds generate from. But that's, and this number also would change, right? Because we've just added additional funding to another project that would be DOTPF funds. Okay,
Unless it was comfort.
so,
You have to recalculate.
yeah, so I guess I'm a further question then, if basically what happens in this context is like, for lack of a better word, like an IOU or a promise to pay or something like that from DOT. Is that something that gets written down? Like, is there a guarantee in writing where DOT says, you know, we are committing to fund the this, I guess it would end up being 560 some million in using NHPP funds? I mean, how is there a paper trail of that, I guess is what I'm wondering.
Well, it'll be listed in the MTP, assuming, if the project moves forward for the MPP, that dollar amount is listed, but it isn't until we get to the TIP, the short-term planning horizon, that we have that more official level of documentation of funding decisions. In which case, that's where you would see in the STIP, there's the deduction of statewide funds and then the additional funding in the TIP. So that, I'm not sure I can answer your question because we certainly document, if we have and the documentation is through the MTP, which the state does member on the MPO is committing to when we put it on the project. So that would be the documentation, I would say, for this planning horizon that we're looking at.
Okay, I think why I'm confused is we just went through an exercise where we had to move things out or change things in the non-motorized plan in order to sort of arrive at fiscal constraint. And so I guess we were to add the Safer Stewards suite of projects to the Complete Streets project list, how do we remain fiscally constrained if we're essentially adding $260 some odd million more than what we currently have available in our funding sources?
Yeah,
How does that work?
It's a super good question. And it's because there's population suballocations that come to the AMATS area MPA. So that Surface Transportation Block Grant Funds, STVG, there is a specific dollar amount every year that's programmed to areas over 200,000 population. So here in AMATS, there is a finite dollar amount for those projects. There's times when within the MPA, we go beyond that. So there's other funds that are budgeted statewide that don't have population restrictions that we can add to it. So when we are short on funding, that's another avenue, is not necessarily within the current project list, deduct things. Sometimes we can add funding to it from other statewide sources, which we do frequently. But here, NHS, there isn't a population suballocation. So in that case, we would simply just program the funds to the project, which is in the MPA, the portion of the project within the MPA.
That's still, I'm still not clear on how we remain fiscally constrained with the MTP though, if that happens. Like, I don't, like, where does that, like in this funding table, right, in our capital funding sources, like where would the NHPP funds appear that would say we are, does that?
Yeah, it does. You would see
I'm really trying to understand how this works.
No, I get it. You would see an increase in item number 5, row 5. So, for a project in 2028, instead of 104.6, it might be 200.6. And then we would have a note that would accompany, you know, what I would imagine what project that reflects, but yeah, you would see an increase in these line items. And so that's the state's commitment to that project moving forward, as it is then determined in the tips for more precise expenditure. Yeah, so those dollars are what Mr. Young and Ellen was mentioning would need to be changed prior to approval.
Okay.
Yeah, but the items that are listed that have AMATs in them, like the transportation alternatives,
Sure.
carbon reduction, those dollar amounts are precisely for this population sub-allocation. So that's like a hard cap. And, you know, that's what we program to that dollar amount. But the other funds, including HSIP, and the federal highways non-NHS, that is a looser pot because it's budgeted statewide. So we can, the revenue would ebb and flow depending on the exact need at that year.
Just to be clear, the FHWA non-NHS on this is actually the AMATS allocation.
Oh,
That's our set specific one. We have that in the note down below that is our like STBG and stuff.
so where would you put like statewide, like STBG flex in here?
I think we have it listed just under the FHWA NHS one,
Okay,
because that's kind of a consolidated pot, because we don't break it out by fund source in our MTP. So we kind of lump it all like that one.
that it could potentially be helpful. Maybe we think about that. I mean, I get that we're not by fund source, but I could see that being misleading a little bit, just to try to understand where the money is. Because the STBG, there is a population sub-allocation for that too, for over 200,000, which is finite. But then there's a broader flex that we sometimes plus up MPA area projects. So I'm not sure how that might be easier to track that way when there's changes.
Yeah, I mean, typically we just, for the FHWA NHS one, we get a report from DOT that's historical about all the funding that's been put into our country. We kind of incorporate it in that. We could change the name of number 6 to be more clear to DC, AMAT's allocation. So people aren't confused by that. And then if there's an additional fund source that we are missing, we can update the numbers. We would just need to kind of find out if it's different from what we've already received in the obligation reports or the reports that we received from DOT.
I thought Ms. Little said that this was going to be NHPP funded, not STBG flex.
It is. Yeah,
Are those the same pot of funding or different?
they're different pots of money. STBG flex can be used on NHS projects,
Okay.
but NHPP funds cannot be used on like
Anything
local
that's-
roads. Yeah, so
So both of those funding types would be used to.
they could be used.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and we typically would not know until we look at the years, upcoming couple years to see how our fiscal constraint worked out. But technically it could be used. Yeah.
Thank you for indulging me those questions.
Happy to. So further dialogue before we essentially table this last action to tomorrow. We probably should have a motion just to keep everything clean. I'm happy to do it as I tabled the first one, but I move to table action on the funding source table to the July 16th regular AMATS Policy Committee meeting as an amended agenda item.
Second.
Okay, further discussion? Hearing none, any objections? Okay, funding sources, it's approved to be tabled towards tomorrow. Okay, I believe we're at the end of our action items now officially. Any further committee comments? Because we do not have any informational items at this time. Member Boland, do you have any further comments before we go to public comment?
I do not. Thank you.
All right, public comments. Is there anything any further comments from those in the room? Online? All right, well, thanks to everybody for being here for close to 3 hours, but we did it ahead of 3 hours, so that was excellent. Yeah, I appreciate everybody's time on this ongoing topic matter, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow. So we'll adjourn at 4:36. Meeting is here tomorrow.
Yes, it's in this room.
All right,
At 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock.
I know.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, another one. Okay.
All right. Thanks you guys for all the answers and work to clarify everything.
Thank you guys very much.
Yeah.
Put you guys on regular.
Yeah.